Good morning. On behalf of the Natural Stone Institute, I would like to welcome you to today's session, Natural Stone Countertops, Consideration for Kitchen and Bath Applications. Now, I am very happy to hand this over to today's speaker, Liz Lane.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, my name is Liz, and I work for Omni Surfaces in Houston, Texas, and I'm thrilled to be doing this presentation for you. I'm going to try real hard not to read any slides to you, so I'm going to trust that everybody can read, and we're going to go through the boring stuff as quickly as we can. So I am a certified speaker, and we are members of the Natural Stone Institute. Continuing education, this is what you get credit for. It is AIA accredited, IDCEC, LACES, and NKBA, and it qualifies for the ever popular Health, Safety, Welfare credit. And I'm not going to read this slide to you. We are IDCEC approved. We are an AIA continuing education provider. And now we're going to get into the meat of the story. So natural stone is the world's oldest building material. And it is very important to know. I feel like the most important thing about working with natural stone, especially for kitchens and bathroom applications, vanities and so forth, is communicating expectations of what your customer wants and what they can expect out of their stone to perform. The countertop pictured here is probably literally hundreds of years old, but it did not look like that the day it was installed. It probably looked quite different. And this is something that is the beauty of natural stone, is its ability to grow and change and develop over time. So our learning objectives, we're going to learn about the physical characteristics and properties of different types of natural stone. This may feel a little bit like your 7th grade earth science class, because we're going to talk about different types of rocks. We're also going to talk about fabrication, installation, care, and maintenance, because picking the right rock is an important part, but if you don't fabricate and install it correctly, that's a good opportunity to have problems. So we're going to nip that all in the bud and move forward on learning about fabrication and installation. We're going to learn also about design aesthetics that can be achieved with natural stone, and why so many of today's trends favor natural stone, and why natural stone, if you notice that all of the unnatural stones, meaning engineered, are trying to copy natural stone. So that should tell you something right there, why we're better. We're going to discover the value achieved in selecting natural stone over artificial stone, and we will move through this. So the first thing we're going to talk about is knowing your natural stone, and I do want to comment on this very first slide because I love it so much. This is an island where they book matched the side panels and wrapped the side around, but if you notice, the top is not a mitered edge. It's just straight cut and polished, and I think it's absolutely a gorgeous look. Beautiful fabrication. So natural stone, let's talk about what natural stone is and what it isn't. Natural stones are harvested from the ground. There is nothing about a natural stone in its process from the earth to your home in which it is changed molecularly or chemically in any way. It is cut, it is finished, and it is installed. There are no cementitious parts or resin binders. Those do not meet the definition of natural stone. And the most popular non-natural stone that you hear about is quartz. And daily I have many customers coming to me telling me, asking me if quartz is a natural stone. So I think it's important to know these things. So the first thing we're going to know, siliceous stones. The important thing to know about siliceous stones, they are not going to be reactive to acids. They are nicely chemical resistant, and that is because the primary ingredient is silica, which is glass. They are high. They are resistant to abrasion. These are some of your harder stones. Marbles are calcareous. What that means is they have a high calcium content. Calcareous stones also does include dolomite, also known as a dolomitic marble. So calcium carbonate is the primary ingredient. They're all going to be heat resistant. Limestone and travertine are both molecularly the same thing, but they're formed very differently. Travertine is formed by steam escaping. Limestone is formed by limestone deposits in cool water. So this is an interesting slide here. One thing I always like to let customers know is that not all granites are created equal, not all marbles are created equal, and you can't even necessarily count on all granite is harder than all marble or more durable than all marble. If you notice the Eureka Danby marble pictured here is an absorption rate of 0.06%. The Balmoral red granite is an absorption rate of 0.164%. So even though the granite has, wins with or has a much higher compressive strength, it can absorb more. Another thought to bear in mind when you're specifying this, it's a darker color. It's not going to show absorption as much. It is going to be a little bit more forgiving in those terms. Granites are not all granites are not all the same thing. They have different chemical compositions and different minerals in them. Some of them have more iron oxide. The white granites tend to be a bit softer. So bear that in mind, and your stone supplier should be able to provide you with the technical data on whatever stone you're considering for that application. Here we go to looking at some different marbles. So Kerma Marfil is worthy of discussion. It is always put with the marbles because it takes a polish and holds a polish. It is actually limestone, so it will etch quite easily. Just a thing to bear in mind. I'm not going to read all of these to you. They are available easily, and you can refer back to this presentation. So know your natural stones. So sometimes there's a little bit of difference between scientific versus commercial classification, and I get a little bit nervous when I have to work with a geologist because they kind of scare me because they know a lot of things, and I'm always scared I'm going to say something not quite accurate. But the important things to know: marble or quartzite. So quartzite is a silica-based stone. It is siliceous. Its primary ingredient is glass. It's not going to react to acids. Quartzite can look like marble, and that's why people tend to really love quartzite because, as I like to say, it looks like a marble, it works like a granite. And it tends to take quartzites tend to take a beautiful, lovely, high polish. Limestone or marble doesn't necessarily matter so much whether it's limestone or marble. It's whether it takes a polish and holds a polish or doesn't. The basic minerals are the same. Marble is older than limestone and has been under pressure for longer. So now granite starts to get kind of interesting. Granite can include interesting things like gabbro, which is it's an igneous. Granite is always an igneous stone. It is meaning it was once molten. So gabbro is cooled inside the earth. granite, gneiss, and things, those are more cooled extrusively. Gneiss tends to have striations and patterns, and schist tends to have striations. Typically, all of these will perform like granite. Now we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, fabrication and installation. So here's a block coming from the quarry, and literally it is a block from the ground, and they take them out. Now you're probably noticing that there's a lot more different stones on the market than there used to be. It's because quarrying techniques have improved, and they can get to quarries that are more remote and quarries that are and pull out all kinds of materials that weren't, common and easy to get to before. So here's a machine, I think this is a Danby, cutting the blocks down to size and then cutting it into slabs. Slabs used to be cut with what was a gang saw, which was kind of cool. It looked like a giant bread slicer, and now they're mostly cut with wire saws. So the calibration is much more uniform, and it used to take literally days for stone to go through a gang saw, and now it's down to hours. So there have been so many quarrying improvements in the last even 10 years. Polishing slabs, here we are at the factory. This, I believe, again, is Danby. And then slab handling. This is very important. Slabs need to be transported vertically, and they're usually transported to you vertically. They do not do well horizontal. That's why mostly tile setters don't want to fool with them. They're going to behave more like glass panels. Typically, when you open the bundle, they're polished side to polished side and rough side to rough side. This prevents scratching. All natural stones are hard enough to scratch themselves, which is why when you show up with samples for your designer and they see scratches on them, well, it's because they were in a box with a bunch of other samples. So yes, they want to be transported polish to polish, rough side to rough side. Slab safety. This is an outdoor slab yard. Never try to catch a falling slab. So slabs weigh 2 centimeters, 12 pounds per square foot. 3 centimeters is 18 pounds per square foot. So you're looking at a slab weighing anywhere from 500 to 1,200 pounds. It's very important to know you can't stop it if it's falling. If it's falling, let it go. Slabs need to be handled carefully and with safety. So this is templating. So this is sort of the new type of templating is what's illustrated here, and this is done digitally. Digitally saves a lot of time, and it's kind of cool because it really lets you maximize the slabs, and it really helps in the details if you're working with a movement material. This is what your digital layouts will work with. The digital layouts really allow you to tweak things and maximize slabs. There's very many fabricators still that just like working with the physical templates because you can take it and tape it on a slab and show your customer what it's going to look like installed. I think that's a really helpful thing. Some fabricators are old school. There is no one answer. Sometimes smallish things or detailed things, they like to use cardboard templates. So this is a kitchen layout. So this is kind of interesting too. Something to remember, you can see this, the seams are straight. They do not go at a 45-degree angle at the corners. And if you have a movement material, something that's very linear, sometimes you really want to use that splay cut. But it is important to remember that it uses a lot more material, and that increases your waste factor, may kick you into having to purchase another slab. The other thing that is also important to take into consideration is that if you're doing a remodel, those corners may not be 45-degree angles. If you're doing a remodel, they could be anything. So that's something to take into consideration when they're doing the layout. Typically, you want to put seams at cabinets at bulkheads, and have as few seams as possible. It's not always possible to put your seams where you want. You need to have good communication with your fabricator on that. This is a nifty little machine. This is a CNC, computer numerically controlled, and it is used for profiling and finishing. So lots of undermount sink cutouts are done by CNC machine, and they do beautiful radiuses, because if you think about it, not always is a radius that's done by hand going to be perfect. This machine plots it out. If your template has made a little flat spot or where the curve isn't quite right, it corrects it. Also, using a CNC machine takes doing a sink cutout is a fraction of the time, literally down from like over maybe 2 hours for a sink cutout on a hard granite to under 30 minutes. So significant time saver, but a CNC machine is also a significant cost for a shop. This is the water jet machine, and they can do curves and radiuses and all kinds of things like that. Not every water jet does the super high fine detail. Some of them are used for less detail and just doing the radiuses. There's some that are water jet saws, which will use the blade on the straight and then change to the jet on a radius. This will allow it to cut much quicker. The water jet part typically moves fairly slowly, whereas the blade can move a little bit quicker. Straight edge profiling machine. These are always kind of fun because you put the piece in raw and rough at one end and it comes out finished. There's lots of different machines on the market, but these only do straight edges. They do not do any radiuses. Let's talk about common stone finishes. The most common is polished. Polished it finishes with a reflective gloss. Honed, when it comes honed from the factory, they stop the finishing process before it takes on a reflective finish. So it's dull and does not have a mirror finish on it. Now, if you have a polished stone and you prefer to be honed, that can usually be done by your fabricator. Honing is a mechanical process. Honing is not a chemical process. Honing involves grinding the polish down, and acid washing is adding acid to the surface to take the polish down, but it also physically etches the stone. And it's very important if they're doing an acid wash, it's different than honed. It will give you a different texture. It's very important that it be flushed with water. If it is not flushed well and any residue from the acid remains on there, anytime it gets wet, it will reactivate. The other kind of finish that's very popular right now is a leather or brushed finish. And that's a really interesting finish. That's actually done with diamond tipped brushes, and they move in a circular motion and they take out the weaker parts, leaving, bringing up the vein and bringing up the grain. Gives you a really nice leather look to it and a slight texture. There's varying degrees of leathering and brushing. Some materials are very, very dense and their leather finish looks almost like a honed. There's others that like fusion quartzite that show very high texture. So it just depends. If you want to have your stone, if you want to alter the finish, you need to get a sample of that particular stone and have it finished. They don't all behave the same under the same conditions with regards to honing, polishing, or leathering. So transportation, they need to be carried upright. And that's just, you know, as slabs are stored upright, it needs to, the pieces that are going to be stalled need to be transported upright. Regarding white materials, it's important that the fabricator uses non-staining adhesive or caulk. If you're doing something like a white marble staircase, they need to be very sure that they use a white thin set with probably a 95% coverage. That way it's not going to show through the way it would if it was a multi-purpose or a darker thin set. Many times things like onyx and things that are backlit are installed with clear silicone caulk. Rodding is what they do to add a little extra support at your sinks. It's going to be stainless and it's got to be fully encapsulated in the epoxy resin. So what they do is they turn it upside down and they run a blade across the surface right there with those highlighted areas where it would tend to be a little bit weaker, and they add these metal rods, and that just makes it stronger and easier for transport and will last better in its installation. So there are different ways to attach sinks. Some are, there are mechanical clips that come with them. Some fabricators prefer to just use an adhesive. Talk to your fabricator about what is the best option for your stone. Also talk to your fabricator. You know, a question that I get a lot is, well, who's the best fabricator in town? The best fabricator is the one that you have the best communication with and can make you and helps you understand the nuances of your project. So things that you want to be mindful of and discuss with your fabricator are the seam placement. Sometimes with regards to slab sizes and the way cabinets are built, sometimes you get a seam where you don't necessarily want one, but they should be able to let you know that in advance. You need to make sure that the edge profile, I've had customers that have come in and say, oh, I want my edge to look really thick. I want it to be a 4-inch miter. And what they're not thinking about is that they're going to either have to build up their countertop really high, or their edge is going to prevent their cabinet drawers from opening. So when you start getting into doing thicker edges, they've got to go higher if you've got drawers, or the drawers have to go lower. You want to use, at the backsplash, you want to use a sanded caulk, not a grout, where planes meet, where the horizontal plane meets a vertical plane. You're going to want to use a caulk that will allow it to shrink and contract, and you won't get the cracks the way you do with a grout. Also, something to think about too is site conditions. Sometimes, good example is townhouses where they have a really large kitchen island and it happens to be on the second floor. you need to know, not only is your slab large enough to do that island in one piece, but are you going to physically be able to get that island in the door, up the stairs, and around the corner and install it in one piece? Because I've had many situations where, sure, we can fabricate it in one piece, but we can't get it in the room in one piece. So that also happens a lot of times with shower wall panels that are on a second or a third floor. Working in high rises, it's always good to be mindful of that. The size of the elevator when you're doing work like that. So take your site conditions into consideration. Module 2, care and maintenance. I just love to look at this slab. I think this is just an absolutely gorgeous installation. Care and maintenance. So any natural stone needs to be sealed. There are no natural stones that don't need sealing. This book, the Dimensional Stone Design Manual, look, I have mine right here. I have it on my desk all the time. I refer to it a lot. It's a free download. I suggest you take advantage of that because there is a world of information in there. One thing to think about is that most slabs now come with a factory resin coating. This is particularly true of granites. They come with a factory resin coating, and this corrects things like little micro fissures and pits, and makes it a really smooth countertop, but it still needs to be sealed. Natural stone also is much more forgiving than any of the engineered stones in terms of being able to repair a chip, being able to maintain it. So we've already kind of talked about stone, its physical characteristics. One thing that I'm going to say about the question that I get asked so often is, how often do you need to reseal? Well, there's a quick, easy way to tell about that. You get your hand wet and you flick little drops of water on your countertop. If they bead up, it's sealed. If they soak in, it's not sealed. It's time to reseal. You may need to seal more often at areas that are high use, like around your cooktop and your sink. So know when you're specifying a stone, whether what you're specifying is chemical or acid resistant or not, and whether it's likely to come into chemicals and acids in its application. I mean, this is particularly important in kitchens, especially residential. All about managing your customers' expectations. So porosity. So what this type of sealers that we work with these days are they're sealers that not enhancing sealers, and they're not topical sealers. They're sealers that soak in, and they're not going to show that they're sealed. It's not going to change the like an enhancing sealer will change the color. A penetrating sealer will not. Sorry, that was the word I was looking for. A penetrating sealer. The stone is going to look exactly the same when it is sealed as it does when it's not sealed. The difference is going to be whether it's absorbing or not. Many stones, especially things like some of the limestones, the lighter or white granites, will need multiple coats of sealer. And the penetrating sealers are typically water-based, so you're not going to have a lot of goo with them or obnoxious fumes when you do that sealing. Always ask your fabricator to seal upon installation. Ask if that's included in the price. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So we just talked about the resin treatment. Resin treatment does definitely increase the resistance, but still, a penetrating sealer is definitely advisable. Care and maintenance. One thing that a penetrating sealer does not do, it does not protect against scratching or etching. So you can seal a marble, and if you spill lemon juice or vinegar or red wine on it, it's going to make a flat spot. I recommend to people that they start, if they're using marble in a kitchen, start with it honed. It's not that it won't etch, it's that it's more forgiving, and it shows it shows it so much less. It's an easier to live with surface honed is than the polish. What you're seeing here in this slide, now some granites come with it's called ager, and it's kind of a little bit of a color enhancer. When they did the edge treatment, sometimes the edge looks a little lighter. There's a product called ager, and the fabricator needs to use that in order to make that color go through. So the topical coatings, we talked about impregnating sealer. Topical coatings, they do offer some protection from sealing, from etching, but the good ones can be expensive and tricky to apply. There are enhancing sealers that are also topical that are commonly used on the darker stones like honed granites, soapstone, that are dark, and when you put it on there, they don't make it shiny, but they bring up the color and they bring up the contrast without giving it a shiny finish. And those are kind of neat too. If you're considering using that type of sealer, have your fabricator give you a sample of it on an offcut, on a sink cutout or something, so you know exactly what you're getting. So with proper sealing, and things can be fairly stain resistant. It's really, and especially the marbles. I see them in kitchens all the time. I use them in kitchens all the time. They look fantastic. You just have to know what your client's expectation is. It's all about managing their expectation. If they cook spaghetti sauce every single day and they're a sloppy cook and they want a polished white marble, then they really might want to think about making some changes. Most people love the look of their marble over time. But it needs to be stressed that those countertops, like the one we saw at the very beginning of this presentation, cannot be, they don't get that patina overnight. It took a while for those 200-year-old countertops to look that good. So the difference between etching and staining. So etching is actually eating the surface of the stone. Staining is something soaking into the stone. So when you have a stone that's very hard, like a granite or a quartzite, if it gets a stain, particularly like an oil stain, the molecules in oils are much smaller and finer than molecules of like water, and they're going to want to stay in there longer. Those can come out. You can either, there are products you can use and try to take them out yourself that are just astringent, that'll dry them up. If you get a bad stain that has color to it, then you may need to use a poultice. And what that does, it's a powder paste you put on top of there, and then let it sit for a few days. You may need to do it multiple times. These are the kind of stains that you're going to need probably a stone care professional to help you with. Etching is going to involve resurfacing. Etching is a very different different than staining. They can happen in conjunction. You can have both etching and staining. Marble calcium carbonate, we have talked about that. Just be careful with the vinegar. And if you start with it dull, it's a lot easier to maintain than if you start with it polished. So for everyday cleaning, you know, right now you can buy at the grocery store or at Home Depot, you can buy really great stone cleaners. You just want something that's pH balanced, says that it's designed for stone, and it'll be fine. You want to avoid things like Windex and Fantastic and harsh cleaners that are not designed for natural stone. Just look for safer stone on it, and I think you'll be fine. So, Module 4, natural stone versus artificial stone. This is stone, engineered stones that are named after natural stones are kind of the bane of my existence. Lots of opportunities for confusion and mistake there. Always ask. Mont Blanc engineered quartz, as you can see, is very different from Mont Blanc natural quartzite. Also, you can see two different brands have the same name, and they're very different from one another. You just have to be thorough there. All engineered stone is basically trying to be natural stone. So here's a slide of countertop comparisons. Basically, and this kind of gets you to another CEU. Natural stone is going to be the more green choice. There are no polyesters, styrenes, dyes, clay, things like that. Everything that's in natural stone comes from the earth. It comes out of the earth. It's cut and shaped and installed. With quartz and other materials, there is a polyester resin or a chemical component that makes it less than green. It's always good to talk about sustainability, and that's another CEU that is available through the Natural Stone Institute, but it's just nice to reduce your waste and your carbon footprint. Natural stone is always recyclable. At the very least, it can be made into aggregate. Most engineered stones, like quartz, not recyclable. When they're done, they go into a landfill, period. Quarry to the kitchen. So here it is. This is sort of the short list. You can see much less stops on the road from the quarry to your home than from the raw material to the crushing to the transporting the raw materials to the manufacturing, more transporting, more manufacturing, lots and lots of steps that end up making engineered stone not at all carbon neutral. Also natural stone, 100% natural, and almost never has red list ingredients. You're looking at cadmium, lead, those kinds of things. Those aren't found in most slabs. You're going to be good on that. Processing them, they're not going to off gas in your home. Natural stone is the green choice. Sustainability, we do a whole other CEU on that, which I would love to do for you. Design trends, and this is a great picture here. This is a sink that's been carved from the stone. It's one big slab carved all from one piece. Gorgeous look. This is Chip and Joanna Gaines Bakery at Magnolia in Waco, Texas. They use Carrara marble. This is kind of a cool one, the Pinnacle Award winner. Fantastic look here. It's the natural stone on the island with the high polished metal. It's just really amazing look. This one is really worth paying attention to. This is all another one carved all from one block. The stone was selected in Carrara, Italy. The sink is carved from a solid piece. You can see the columns there, also carved from a solid piece. All sourced from a single block, and I think that's a lovely installation. Where I love how they included the windowsill there. Book matched marble. This is a huge island, 15 feet long, and I believe this material to be sodalite. It's dark blue with a white vein. Beautiful material. Lots of things you can do. You can see that it's book matched. This is on onyx, and they've done an integral sink there. Onyx can be backlit. Onyx is very important to know that onyx is a calcareous stone. It is not siliceous. A lot of people think that onyx should be siliceous because it takes such a beautiful polish, and it is so highly reflective that it almost, and you can see through it like glass, but it's calcium based. So onyx will be reactive to acids. Very important to take care of it. But isn't that a gorgeous installation? Here's your basic resources. I think you're all familiar with these. Industry associations, which the Natural Stone Institute, which please rely on them because they're an awesome organization and really great at educating their members. A&D resources, the Natural Stone Resource Library. I showed that to you earlier. I keep mine next to me all the time, and it's free. Download it from the Natural Stone Institute. More courses. We've got even more courses that are offered, and I hope you'll look into those. We would love to be part of your ongoing continuing education. And I'm going to let Daisha talk now.
Yes, hi Liz. We do have some questions that came in during our session,
Okay.
and hopefully you can help us. The first one is from Deborah. I'm an architect, and 10 years ago, our installer put too much sealer and the wrong sealer on our black granite countertops. No matter what I've tried, the counters are sticky. How do I get rid of the old sealer?
Good question. Well, it would really be helpful to know exactly what that sealer's made of. If it doesn't sound like a penetrating sealer. If it's a penetrating sealer, it will act as a solvent to itself, and more penetrating sealer can take that off. Also, you can use, have you tried acetone? Pure straight acetone, which is the main ingredient in nail polish remover, but it is not the same nail polish remover as nail polish remover for acrylic nails. Don't use that on your stone. You may try that. It sounds to me like if you've tried everything, you're going to have to seek a stone restoration company. Was the stone polished or honed or leather? That might give us a little more information. It sounds like it was a topical sealer that'll have to be stripped off.
That would be my recommendation as well. I would get
Yeah.
some restoration person involved. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
On that same topic of sealers, someone asked, Jeffrey asked, water-based or petroleum-based? Which is preferred?
For sealer?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, water-based. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
yes, agreed. Let's see. Oh, Deborah said it was honed granite, black granite. So my guess is it might have been like absolute black gabbro but yes.
Yeah, it sounds like they put a topical sealer or something on there and used too much. It's going to probably take a stone care professional
Yes,
to safely remove that and then reseal it with a penetrating sealer.
exactly. Got another question here.
Okay.
How do we know how quartzite, with quotes, will act? Labeled quartzite from a slab yard, but not a true quartzite.
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay.
Yes.
I think I'm looking at you, Super White. Super White Dolomite. I have a lot of customers that come in and they say, well, I was told it was a light quartzite. No, it isn't. It's Dolomite. It's very hard. It's harder than marble. Dolomite is high resistance to abrasion, but Dolomite should also be referred to by its true name, dolomitic marble. Um, and it should be definitely sealed. It is not going to be resistant to acids at all. True quartzites are siliceous in nature and uh, should not react to acids. And
I agree. Liz, this is a pretty common challenge that we face that distributors, and not it's not their fault, but they are sold something and they sell it on their floor
yes,
that it's not quartzite. So, there are ways you can go to, especially I would recommend that people would go to our consumer-based website, use naturalstone.org and put quartzite in there or put light white countertops, know the difference. There's a fantastic, it's a fantastic resource for you to get
yes,
real information and learn how to kind of be your own stone sleuth.
right. Well, another thing that some distributors will do is they'll put a trade name on something so it's harder to look up. So, it may take a little digging. It may take using Google Images or Google Lens to take a picture of it and see what comes up. I think those are useful resources too.
Agreed, agreed. I did get a question here about heat on natural stone. And I know that you have experience with other alternative materials and natural stone. How do you address the question about heat on natural stone countertops?
Um, Heat is fine on most natural stone countertops. The time when you kind of would worry about it is if there's like a tremendous difference, like maybe if you're using your turkey fryer outside and it's freezing cold and you've got part of your counter is really, really cold and the other parts are really warm, maybe then you could get a crack. But typically, taking a pot out of the oven and setting it on natural stone or taking it off the burner and setting it on natural stone are not going to cause you a problem. Quartz, engineered quartz is where you will have a problem. Engineered quartz is only stable to 350 degrees and it is not UV stable at all. But hot stuff, I always use a trivet on mine or something because when you take something out of the oven and you want it to cool off, it's helpful to have air going under it. So that's why I use a trivet. But if you set your cookie sheet on your marble, it's going to be okay. It's not going to ruin it. It's not going to burn it.
Agreed. On that, you mentioned UV stable. So
Yes.
what is the best stone for outdoor countertop use?
Well, that's a good question. Well, there are some stones. They're not all created equal. Not by a long shot. and it depends on how you use your outdoor countertop. Um, I've had many customers that wanted to use black polished granite on a summer kitchen that's like completely exposed, and I'm like, that's going to get really hot here in Texas.
Mhm.
So that's something to bear in mind, not just the UV rays, but how you're using it, and and how you're going to contact it. Most quartzites are UV stable, light colored limestones are. A lot of granites that are light colored will have iron oxide deposits in them, and over time with moisture, the rust can start to grow, and that's a whole other thing. Also, some of the darker colored granites can fade over time. Great example of that. I used to work at a company that had an Ubatuba mailbox, and it started out dark green and ended up kind of brown. Wasn't too pretty. Didn't do too good. You live and you learn.
Absolutely. Let's see. Would you ever recommend using a sealed honed granite as a kitchen countertop?
Sure, absolutely.
Agreed. My experience when I was in the fabrication world is that the only challenge that I saw with dark honed granite countertops is that you would often see fingerprints. So you would see oily fingerprints. You just
Yep.
have to stay on top of wiping that. And if oily fingerprints or fingerprints looking spots on your countertop bug you, don't hone it because they won't be as noticeable
Right.
on a polished
Or
surface.
think about honing it and using an enhancing sealer,
True.
which will darken it and make those fingerprints a little less noticeable.
True.
But yeah, honing is fine, but it's whether the fingerprints are going to make you insane.
Exactly. It's all about managing those expectations,
It's
isn't it?
managing those expectations. I've had customers that I would never recommend anything like that to, because they're just too picky about it. And then I have other customers that they don't care. They want to live. They want to see it change, and they don't call it stains, scratches, or etching. They call it memories.
Oh, I
And
love that.
I know, isn't that good?
That is good. And that brings me to a question. This makes a lot of sense too. Someone's asking, what are the best long-term maintenance procedures for historic marble countertops?
Ooh,
I think it's kind of that same thing.
yeah. And I don't know that I want to go to answer too much on that, because that gets into a different type of restoration,
Mhm.
and sometimes they'll some restoration's an entirely different corner of the market, and I don't want to be wrong on this. Lots of times they'll use a highly diluted acid to acid wash it and get off old crud. If you use too much, you can end up damaging it. I had a customer that I did a project for about 10 years ago, and they bought an antique marble toilet in Italy, and they wanted to hook it up, and they wanted it to be their toilet in their powder room. And the plumber was absolutely fit to be tied. Yeah, he was like, this is nothing like we use in North America. And he was afraid he was going to end up hurting it. And quite frankly, I don't know how he'd clean it. Yeah, that I don't know what became of that, but I am reticent to give advice on cleaning historic things, monuments and antique stones.
I agree. But like you said, sometimes it's it's memories. It's actually,
Right.
you don't want to take it back to its original state. Just like that sink that you showed early in the presentation. I think that part of what's beautiful about historic marble is that it has lived many, many ages, and it's going to continue to
Yes.
age and live many more lives.
Agreed. I agree completely with that.
Let's see here. On a different note, someone asked about whether soapstone is a good countertop material.
Well, it depends on how you define good. Um, it is acid resistant, yes, but the primary, and it's also great with heat. The primary ingredient in soapstone is talc. Talc is very soft. I show my customers how I can just take off a silver ring and easily scratch it. And when you scratch it, it'll leave a white mark. But you can also easily make that scratch go away by using a topical sealer. Most people just use something like mineral oil or butcher block oil.
Right.
I caution you against linseed oil because it is highly flammable. But and nobody wants that. But it's you have, if you want that dark sort of lustrous look, you do have to make a commitment to keeping some type of an oil or sealer on there. If you're okay with it looking old and worn and scratched, then it's not a problem at all.
Agreed.
So
Absolutely.
I hope I got that, answer.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, I agree. I
good
totally,
is such an opinion thing.
it is.
Well, when people say good and best, what's the best countertop? I'm like, oh,
Depends on what you want.
right. It depends on how you live. I mean, when I was in fabrication, I did kitchens that required 10 slabs of Calicata Borghini, and not one thing was ever going to be cooked in them because they had a catering kitchen behind the real kitchen where the real work went on, and it was usually done in something like tropical brown granite.
Right.
There was the show kitchen and there was the real kitchen. And then I've done other projects where they use a white marble in a kitchen and just let it do its thing, and it just looks fantastic, and it just gets better and better. But
Absolutely.
it depends on your level of tolerance.
Thank you, Liz. You did a fantastic job, and we really appreciate you for presenting today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
You bet. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks a lot.